Question 2 from AFM revision kit, right? So this is also very similar to question 1. This this type of question will not appear in your exam because this is full theory question, right? It's a 25 marks theory question, but still it's better to go through this so that you can brush through your section A part, right? So I'm not going to read the whole case study line by line as I used to do. I'm just going to give a summary of what is written there. You can read it by yourself, right? So basically this is about a company. It's a clothing retailer which is selling a mid-price clothes, right? In a, and it has its own brand, right? It's a mid-price retailer, right? Which is in European Union, right? But because of this there's a crisis, European sovereign debt crisis. Because of that, their profits and their sales has been affected very badly, but this didn't have an impact, right? This did not affect the high priced retailer and the low priced retailer the way it affected Strom company, right? It is a mid price retailer, right? And also, to overcome this situation, this European sovereign debt crisis, they're taking the help of IMF, International Monetary Fund, right? So they are going to take financial support from these countries. And also here they have discussed about austerity measures. Make sure you know what is austerity measures. It's there in your textbook, right? Now, and also to improve their situation, they are going to cut down the cost in their quality control. They are going to cut because their high cost is there in their quality control, high, which is their fixed cost, by the way. So they are cutting their cost down, right, wherever possible, so that they can improve their profits. So now this is your requirement. These are the 4 requirements. A, explain the role and aims of IMF. Role and aims of IMF, and discuss possible reasons why the austerity measures imposed on EU countries might have affected Strom company negatively. Austerity measures have a negative impact on the Strom company. You need to discuss the reasons why it has affected negatively. So there are 2 requirements in one, right? Why austerity measures might have affected negatively. B, which is for 4 marks. And when it's for 10 marks, right, divided equally. That's like 5 marks for the role and aims of IMF and the 5 marks for the why austerity measures affected negatively. So this is 5 marks. And this part is 5 marks, right? Whenever you are having a 2 requirements under one, you have to divide the marks equally, because you don't know how much marks are allocated for each. They have just given you the overall marks, the total marks, which is 10. So divide it equally and write the points. B is for 4 marks. Suggest giving reasons why the austerity measures might not have impacted clothing retailers at a high and a low price range as much as the mid price range retailers like Stramcom. So here also you can see 2. One is for the high clothing retailers, one is for the low clothing retailers. So that means 2 marks for high, 2 marks for low, right? Next, C is for 6 marks. Discuss the risk to the Strom company of reducing the cost relating to quality control. I told you they are really reducing the cost which is for the quality control. So you need to discuss the risk. What were the risk? There are risks if you are reducing the cost which are relating to the quality control, right? Maybe yes, in the short term you are reducing the cost, but in the long term it's having an impact in your quality. Quality gets affected means ultimately your customer will go to your competitor, right? Relating to cost, relating to quality control, and how the detrimental impact of such reduction in cost could be decreased, because there will be some risk, right, because of that reduction in cost. How that impact, that negative impact, could be reduced. So there are here also there are 2 requirements in one, and it's for 6 marks. So 3 marks for risk, 3 marks could be for your how it could be detrimental impact could be reduced. And finally, the last one is for 5 marks, right? Discuss the competitive advantage that a global multinational company retailer would have over a clothing retailer based in one Eurozone country. So this is based on your multinational versus your local, right? So it's like competitive advantage of a multinational, global multinational clothing retailer based in over the local company. And it's for 5 marks. This is just one requirement. So that means you have to discuss, come up with 5 points, right? This is how you need to decide when you read the requirements, how many points you're writing for each requirement based on the marks. Now let's go to the answer. Before the answer, I need to show you this, right? This is in your chapter 16, and the top tips is you need to split the marks equally. And for B, right, why it has not affected the high and the low, you need to ensure that it addresses each issue separately. High has to be separately, low price retailer should be discussed separately. You cannot put in one, right? It should not be an overall answer. Don't try to merge them into one. It should be discussed separately. That's why 2 marks for each. And in part D, make sure that you are not giving generic advantages of multinational company, because they told what are the competitive advantages of multinational clothing retailer, right? So you are not supposed to give generic advantages of multinationals. It should be based on that case study. And these are some easy marks. In part C, there are some fairly easy marks available for discussion of obvious risk, right? Part C was for 6 marks. They told you about the risk and how to reduce the impact of that risk. So these are some easy marks which you can give from your common sense. You don't need your knowledge, right? You don't need your theory part here. But remember to tailor your answer to be relevant for Strom company. It should not be general risk and some general recommendation. It should be related to Strom company. Now we'll see how the marking scheme. If you can see A, explanation and the reasons for austerity are 5 to 6 or 4 to 5. You can take 5 for each. B, for low prices 2 marks, for high prices 2 marks. C, this risk is 3 to 4. Reduction of the detrimental impact is 2 to 3. You could take 3 each. And D, since it's for 5 marks and only one requirement, so 1 mark per valid point. That means you need 5 points. Right? Now I'm going to take you through the answer. Right? So in that first paragraph, in this paragraph, they have discussed what is the role of the IMF. So the IMF role is to oversee what? Global financial system. You need to know what are the roles of IMF, International Monetary Fund. Right? It is there in your textbook. So please go through this. You can expect this type of questions. Maybe not as this lengthy, not as 10 marks, but as a 5 marks, 6 marks, you might get this. So, the role of IMF, there are further roles such as to stabilize exchange rates, helping countries to achieve balance of payment, another one. Also, economic policies to help in the development of countries. So their main aim is in the development of countries through whatever means they could, right? That is their main aim, the role of IMF, right? So how they are going to help the countries? They can provide financial support to the member countries in a form of a loan which is typically repayable in 3 to 5 years. Now the conditions for each country which they put, of course, when you are taking a loan, there are some preconditions which needs to be satisfied. So that conditions can be different from country to country. But here listed below are some of the general conditions, right? So let's read what are those general conditions. It's not possible that during the exams condition you will not be able to come up with full-fledged answer like this with all the points, but at least you need to cover some points, right? You need to use some points so that you can elaborate on that. So that's why you need to know the role of IMF, not all but at least some. Okay, so first one is they want their countries which borrow. Okay, the IMF want countries which borrow from IMF to get into a position to start repaying the loans fairly quickly, right? Of course, they need to be repaid quickly. Even if you give a loan to your friend, obviously you will want your friend to pay you the loan as quickly as possible, right? So the same applies for IMF. To do this, okay, how they are going to repay quickly to IMF? To do this, the countries must take effective actions to improve their balance of payment position. Now it also, see, IMF can give you the loan, but it is up to the country, right? It is up to each country how they are going to improve their balance of payment position. They have to do it, because if they don't improve their balance of payment position, they cannot repay the loan to IMF as quickly as possible, right? Now let's go to the second point. Second point is saying to make this improvement. Which improvement? To make that improvement in balance of payment. The IMF generally believes that a country should take action to reduce the demand for goods and services in the economy. Right? They have to reduce the demand. Please go through the highlighted words, right? The bold words. They are the key words. You need to put this in your answers when you're studying through the answers, right? When you're reviewing, checking yourself with the answer in your revision kit, make sure that the points which are in bold needs to be there in your answer. They are the keywords. You're getting marks for those words. Okay, so they should take action to reduce the demand for goods and services in the economy. How they are going to do it? It is given in the bracket. By increasing taxes and cutting government spending. Yes. If you increase the tax and you cut the government spending, you can reduce the demand for goods and services. This will reduce imports and help to put a brake on any price rises. This will reduce imports. This is your main aim. Your aim has to be to reduce imports, increase exports. Then only your balance of payment can improve, and then only you can pay the loan to IMF quickly. So in short, what IMF is doing, if you think, IMF is not just giving you the loan, but also with that loan, they're pressurizing you, they're putting you in a position that you ultimately improve your balance of payment. You're not just using the loan amount, right, and pay as okay as you want, but you're also pressurized to improve your balance of payment position. You are pressurized. Once you are pressurized, you will do it. You will anyhow do it. But imagine if IMF have not put this condition there, that you should be able to repay the loan as quickly as possible, right? They will be relaxed. They will not take any actions where they can reduce demand, which will ultimately not improve their balance of payment position, right? Which means they are going in further debt. So this is how IMF is helping the country to improve, by giving a loan, but also telling that you have to pay this loan as quickly as possible. How? By reducing demand. So when you study, you have to study like this way. You have to speak to yourself. When I used to study, I used to speak to myself, and that's how I used to study. You can never read notes, blah, 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 and study or memorize it from the notes. Don't try to do that. It's a very bad practice. It's not a good way of learning. When you're learning also, repeatedly talk to yourself. Try to create a flow. Try to create everything like a process. Like this happens, and then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. Try to link. Then you will be able to understand better, and you will not forget it in the long run. Okay, so this is one tip for you if you're studying, because some people have the habit of studying the theory part from the revision kit itself. They don't actually go to the textbook. So when you're studying from the revision kit, this is how you need to study. Okay. Okay. So the country's industries should then also be able to divert more resources into export markets, and hence export should improve in the long term. Yes, that's what they want. In the long term, export should increase. Now the third point. With the deflationary measures along this line, standard of living will fall. These are deflationary measures, right? The above one, whatever they are taking action to reduce demand, increasing tax, cutting government spending, is what? Deflationary measure. They are known as deflationary measure. What happens when you take a deflationary measure? This is, see the way I am linking the second to the third point. You need to do this if you need to understand it. Because just memorizing some rules and aim of IMF will not help you here. Maybe the short term you can remember and write the answers. Writing answer is not a big thing. But the thing is, in the exam, you must be able to understand the concept, then only you can relate it to the scenario. If you don't understand the concept, what's happening in the picture, in the bigger picture, what IMF is doing, why IMF is doing this, how it's improving the economy, you will not be able to answer it. Because scenario in your exam will be different. You will not get the same case study. Right? So deflationary measures along these lines will reduce standard of living. Standard of living will fall because of this, at least in the short term. And unemployment may rise. Yes, because of this, unemployment will rise. IMF regards these short-term hardships to be necessary for countries to succeed sorting out its balance of payment and international debt problems. So IMF is saying that in the short term, it's better to face the hardship rather than in the long term, right? For the long-term benefit, they are taking short-term pain. That is the policy of IMF. Now let's go here. IMF has been criticized for the conditions imposed on countries, including specific criticism for suggestion that its policies causes austerity measures which impact more on those with lower or mid-range incomes. This in turn hinders long-term growth and development, right? So it is not that IMF policy is welcomed, right? They have been criticized for these conditions. Why? Because this is causing austerity measures, which is having an impact on lower and mid-range incomes. As with the company, because this company, Strom company, is a mid-range company, right? Mid-price clothing retailer. So it is having an impact because of this condition. Now they are slowly moving to the austerity measures. You see, you need to link how the IMF conditions, the roles and aims of IMF is giving a rise to the austerity measures, which is having a negative impact in Strom company. So you need to relate how it is having that austerity measure, right? It is this paragraph, austerity measures they are linking. Then they are immediately they are not talking about austerity measures, right? They didn't stop at the roles and aims of IMF and started discussing austerity measures. You're not supposed to do that. You are first supposed to create that link, how it is having a link, how that austerity measure is coming. Then only you can show how it is having a negative impact, right? So this is that link. Link between IMF and austerity. Okay, now let's go to the second paragraph. Second paragraph, they're talking about austerity measures, right? Strom company trades across Europe, where economic activity has been severely affected in recent years due to the banking crisis and then due to austerity measures applied by many European governments, right? So many governments have tried to apply this measure. This they have taken from the case study because they have told that because of that crisis, most of the economic countries has been affected, right? So for retailers, where there are two problems caused by this. What are those problems? Because they told how the austerity measures have a negative impact. So you need to discuss the problems. Firstly, with limited growth and higher taxes, individuals will have less disposable income. So this is the first issue, right? Firstly, less disposable income. Why? Because of higher tax and limited growth. Second, increased unemployment will also limit disposable income. These two problems mean customers may reduce the expenditure on clothing in order to meet other needs, right? If a customer is having a less disposable income, do you think they will go and buy clothes? They will have spend from their pocket on clothes. Rather, they will try to spend in their other needs, which are more crucial, which are more necessary. Clothing, this is a mid price, right? Strong companies are mid price. They can switch to low price also. It's not a big deal. But they will rather spend on other areas where it is more crucial, more important. So because of this, this is having an impact on a Strom company, because Strom company is a mid-price clothing retailer. Now, companies may need to increase their marketing spend and positively offer greater discounts, right? How they can, let me go through the requirement again and see whether they ask to. Okay, this is for the learning purpose, by the way, this part, right? This line they have given here, because they are giving you reasons how to overcome that issue, which was not asked. But for your learning purpose, you can just read it, because your question just asked you discuss the possible reasons how the austerity measures have impacted negatively. So you don't need to give recommendations and on how to improve the condition, but this is for your learning purpose, you can read it. But I will just quickly go through it. Companies may increase, how they can improve, they may increase their marketing spend and positively offer greater discounts or other incentives in order to remain competitive or maintain market share. This increased cost will reduce profit margins, right? But if you're saying this point, right, this is an improvement, you need to link how this improvement can have a problem. They are linking, because the question didn't ask you the improvement measure. But if you're giving this point might be missed by many. You might not give this point, you might stop here, you might stop at here, this point. But if you want to elaborate further and give points, then this they are linking this how to remain competitive with this reduce profit margins. Because if they take such actions to improve competitive position or maintain market share, this increased cost will reduce profit margins. This is another way how it is affected negatively, right? It can be seen that the profit margins have reduced from Strom company from 2001 level. This directly they have taken this point from the case study itself. You need to put evidence like this. Whenever you say profit margin is reducing, sale is increasing, reducing, whenever you give such statement, you need to back up with your evidence from the case study. Go and check, have there been mentioned anything about where they have told that profit margin is reducing or improving or anything like that. If they haven't given, then you cannot tell. It's better not to write such statement. But here, case study in the beginning itself, the first paragraph, they have told that profit margins have reduced from 2001 onwards. So now it is okay for you to mention this point, this paragraph, right? Now you can talk about this, because there is in the case study you can see profit margin has reduced. Therefore, you can write this point, right? Whenever you are short of points, this is another tip for you how to come up with points. Whenever you are short of points, you don't know what to write, go to your case study and see for such statements, look for such statements. Profit margin is reduced, this is weakening, that is improving. From that, you can create points, right? Like this. Those statements will tell you, will make you, will help you to come up with more points, right? Like this, profit margin have reduced. So because of that, you can say that in order to remain competitive and all, this increased cost will reduce profit margins and blah blah, right? Now let's see. This may be caused by increased spend on marketing or by failure to reduce the cost base proportionally. But further analysis would be required to determine the cost. This kind of statement is to be there in your answer. This kind of sentences. Better when you practice, you develop such kind of, you can even copy paste also, right? To each, to your answers. To all your theory answers, you can take this point. But further analysis would be required to determine the cost. Why? Because in the case study, it is not clear. Whenever something is not clear cut from your case study, then you need to write this sentence. But further analysis would be required to determine the cost, because you're not sure. So that's why you're saying that better to do a further analysis. right? In AFM, this kind of sentences is always required from a position of a finance director, because most of the cases you will be acting as a finance director only, right? So this type of sentences needs to be there. You cannot be 100% sure. Okay, because they haven't told in the case study whether they have increased spending on marketing or they are failing to reduce the cost. They haven't told. So you're just assuming. So when you're assuming, you need to write this sentence, further analysis is required. Now the last paragraph is they are saying, is it appears the Strom company is trying to reduce its cost to address the issue of declining profitability? Right? Yes, they are trying to reduce its cost because they're told that they are reducing their they are reducing the quality control, because quality control is a high fixed cost. That's why you can say that they are reducing its cost. In circumstances where sales revenue are declining and they cannot be stabilized or improved, cost structures may need to be changed in order for Strom company to make reasonable profits. Right? So wherever you're in a situation where you cannot change your revenue, right? You cannot maintain that revenue or you cannot improve that revenue, then leave the revenue, focus on your cost. Your cost structure you need to change to improve your profits. Now let's come to the second point, B part. B part was asking why high price and low price clothing retailers are not affected as mid price retailers. So first we'll see there are two paragraphs. This is for low, this is for high. Whenever you write about two different points, you need to divide this into different paragraphs. Under different paragraphs it needs to be there. Don't put in one paragraph low and high both together, and don't combine and talk together. Low and high is like this, like this, like this. No, it has to be separate. 2 marks for each. 2 marks for this, 2 marks for this. Now first we'll start with low price clothing retailers. Okay, why they are not affected? It is very common that mid price will switch to low price during this crisis, right? Because clothing is not a necessary commodity, right? It is not something which customers will spend their money during this time. They don't mind shifting to low price. So that's what they have told, that they may benefit at the expense of mid price due to a switch from mid price to low price, right? So the austerity measures may result in people having less money to spend or being less willing to spend due to future uncertainty. As stated above, it is thought that austerity measures affect the mid-income and low-income earners more negatively. Together with the above, this may change their buying preference to low-price clothes. This would be the case especially where the brand loyalty is limited and the low price are perceived as either similar quality or better value for money. Right? It's very common. This, from your understanding of the clothing industry, you can understand. You just take yourself as a consumer, as a customer, right? As a customer of clothing retailer. Position yourself and see how you will react when an economic uncertainty is arising. Right? Will you shift to the low from mid price to low price? And why? When you can come up with answers like that, you can write those answers in your answer sheet. It will help you a lot to imagine yourself. Now let's go to the high price. Okay, high prices, because in high price they are luxuries, right? Luxury, they are not affected so much by price. They have this brand loyalty, right? So because of that greater brand loyalty, customers are less likely to switch to mid-price clothing. Customers who purchase high-price clothing may prefer to make savings elsewhere to switch into cheaper clothing. They are willing to make savings from somewhere else, but not from switching from high to mid-price, right? That's what they prefer. So many people who purchase high-price clothing may be high-income earners. Yes, it is reasonable to make this assumption, right? Most of the high priced clothing are purchased by high income earners only because they're luxurious products, they are highly priced. So low income earners will not be able to afford that, right? So for high income earners it will not affect so much. The economic condition will not affect so much that they have to shift from high to mid. So they are less affected by the austerity measures. Now let's go to C. C have been asked you to discuss the risk of reducing the cost, right? Well, in the quality control, and how you can reduce the negative impact. So let's read it. It was for 6 marks. Okay, so the most obvious risk arising from reducing the allocation of resources to quality control is that quality control inspections will be reduced, right? So this is one issue, right? One is this. One obvious risk is quality control inspections will be reduced. If you are reducing the resources from quality control, right? You are not allocating resources to quality control. There is no need to have quality control inspection, so it will automatically reduce. What happens because of that? What happens? It's not enough for you to stop at this point. Most of the candidates will stop at this point. Quality control inspections will reduce. So what? You need to say what happens because of this. Always ask this question: what if this happens? What if this happens? Always ask this question and answer. So what if quality control inspections will reduce? What happens? This increases. It is in bold, so I'm not underlining it. It's important that you have to include these words, right? This increases the risk of defective goods. Whenever your quality control inspections reduce, of course your risk of defective goods will increase, right? So there's a chance that the cost of processing returned goods could outweigh the savings in quality control. So there is a chance, right? You are trying to save cost, right? Through quality control, reducing investments in quality control. But your return goods will increase. The goods will be returned to you, the back customer, right? That cost of return goods will increase compared to the savings in quality control which you are making, which is not good. So a reduction in the monitoring of working conditions of employees, right, may allow questionable employment practices to emerge which would compromise Strom companies' ethical standards. So they're saying that if you're not monitoring the working conditions of employees, then the employee practices will be questionable, and this could compromise the ethical standards. Why? Because they believe that they are being ethical by monitoring their employees' working conditions. That's what they have stated. Strom company. It is there in the last paragraph, last line. Please go and check. So this will compromise that they're ethical. If they reduce, right? So a further risk is the impact on the reputation of Strom company and its products. So the reputation is the second risk. There's a risk to reputation. That's the second risk. Number 2. Lower quality and defective clothes could cause serious damage to the reputation of Strom company. See how they're explaining? This paragraph, they're explaining reputation only. First, you need to identify one line. You have to say this is the risk. Then, in that paragraph, you have to explain further. Elaborate on that point. How it's going to damage the reputation. This is how it's going to damage the reputation. Let's see, right? Yes, lower quality and defective clothes could cause serious damage to the reputation and result in reduced future sales revenue. This damage to reputation would be very difficult to reverse, right? This you need to mention, because risk in other areas versus risk in reputation. If you compare, risk in reputation will always outweigh the risk in your other areas, right? You could have financial risk, you could have health risk, you could have safety risk anywhere, but reputational risk is the greatest risk out of all. Why? Because other risk you could take actions and you could reverse it, but reputation risk, once there's a risk to your reputation, when your reputation is at stake, it is very difficult to reverse the reputation. Why is that? Because the reputation is something, it is in the eyes of your customers, it is in the eyes of your suppliers, it is in the eyes of your public. It is not something to do with your product. it takes a long time to gain that reputation, and it just takes seconds to lose that reputation, right? Whereas your other risks, let's say your financial risk, you can take care, you can manage your finance and reduce the risk. Your health risk, you can take health measures and improve the health risk, reduce the health risk. Technological risk, all the other kind of risk. But reputation risk is not something, it is in your hand. Reputation, your reputation is in the hands of your supplier, in your hands of customer. Do they value you? So it's very difficult to reverse that, to get the reputation back, even if you try to do changes in your company and try to improve. The customer, your customer might not want to trust you again, because trust is very difficult to gain. So that's why this reputation risk, when you talk about reputation risk, please mention that is very difficult to reverse. That's why it's in bold, right? A fall in ethical standards could also badly damage reputation. Customers may switch their custom to alternative suppliers, investors may sell their shares, public may organize campaigns against Tomcom. Such reputation damage will be long-term and even permanent. You see, reputation damage is long-term and permanent. It is not temporary risk. So don't neglect reputation risk. Now, what is the third risk? Strom company may be able to make savings in quality control without causing the adverse effects discussed above, right? See, it is not always necessary that if you are having a saving in quality control, it will always have the negative effect only, as they have mentioned here. Savings could be made by reviewing the process and eliminating any unnecessary or duplicated procedure. Now they are telling you how to reduce the negative impact. Because of reducing quality control, you are having some cost risk. How you can eliminate that risk? This paragraph is talking about how to eliminate that risk. How to reduce negative impact of the risk. The last paragraph. Savings could be made by reviewing the process and eliminating any unnecessary or duplicate procedure. Can you see this? This needs to come from your own knowledge. It might differ from individual to individual. Right? So savings could be made by reviewing the process and eliminating any unnecessary or duplicate procedure. So when you study this, right? When you study this, for example, you are studying this, right? You might be thinking that we'll not get the same case study. So what's the use of even writing these answers or going through this answer? I will tell you why it is important to go through each and every question, because each question is different. It is never repeated, right? And one thing you can learn from each question is, it is not very important for you to write the correct answer. What is important is what you are learning from those answers. So when you read these answers, at least in the future, if you get such situation, right, where they told you how negative impact of the risk could be reduced, if it could be for any other situation, but the question comes as how negative risk impact of that negative impact of that risk could be reduced, at least you can come up with these points. That time you might not be able to come up with your own points, right? You might not be able to think like this. At least you can write these points there. So that is the advantage of going through the whole question, all the questions in the revision kit, at least once, just to see what is there. This is the benefit that you need. This is the advantage. That's why I always tell you that you should go through your whole revision kit, because at least you will learn different patterns of answers, different ways of answering. Because you do, because your question, the facts might be different, but the question might be very similar in a different context. Of course, maybe the company might be different, but still the way of reducing the impact of the risk, you could write these points there. So it's better that you at least have a go through of it. So this are the type of questions which you don't need to practice over and over again, right? You can just go once, but when you go through them once, you need to be very, uh, what do I say? You need to be very critical of each point. You need to read and understand it properly so that you don't forget and you don't have to come and revisit it again, right? So learn it properly the first time. That's what I always say. Don't rush through it. Don't rush through, because we are always tempted to finish the revision kit. There are so many questions. How am I going to finish? So break down each questions for per day and always try to solve those questions for those days only and work your 100% off, right? You have to give your 100% to each question. Whatever the questions you touched in the revision kit needs your 100% attention. It's not that you are studying, reading somewhere, and then somehow you're trying to finish the question, and somehow you're trying to finish that revision kit questions, and you are saying that I have finished all the questions in the revision kit. That is not what is expected of you. You are learning through your revision kit also. The way you are studying through your textbook, revising notes and notes and notes from revision kit also, you can learn a lot if you know how to use the revision kit to your advantage. Covering the question is not important. You might not cover all the whole revision kit, that's okay. But at least whatever the questions you do it properly. Rather than doing too many questions poorly, it's better to do few questions but properly and correctly. Okay. So, okay. So, yeah. So this one point could be there inside the bracket. Savings could be made by reviewing the process and eliminating any unnecessary or duplicated procedure. So this one way you could reduce the negative impact. This could be one way. Second, it should also evaluate whether alternative processes which are less resource intensive can be used that will not compromise quality control or the monitoring of working condition. This could be a second, right? So this is your first, this is your second. This review should be performed by experts. All critical process must be retained. Whenever you are saying that you can eliminate unnecessary or duplicate procedure in the first one, you cannot eliminate this process. Which process? The critical processes you cannot outsource to someone, you cannot eliminate also, you cannot even automate also. If it has to be done in-house, it should be done in-house, it should be retained regardless of the level of the resources required. Even if too much of resources are required, see, you are telling that you can reduce some of the process where too much of resources are required, right? But you must take care of your critical processes. You cannot reduce those. You can, even if it requires a lot of resources, because success of your business depends on your critical processes. Remember that, right? And the risk of the review accounting error should be, this is the third they are talking about, third risk, the way how you can reduce the impact. So the risk of the review containing errors should be evaluated and discussed by senior management to ensure that Strom company is comfortable with the likely risk level. Now let's go to the third one. Third one, they're asking about the competitive advantage of a global financial retailer versus clothing retailer in just one eurozone country, right? This is very easy. This is the easiest. In fact, most of you can answer because we all know the general advantages of multinational companies. Now we just have to link it to the case study. That's it. So, if you have seen how this answer is there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 different points in 5 different paragraphs. Can you see how that answer has been framed? It's not important what you write. It's very important how you frame your answer. Right? So first paragraph is the first point. All the points, important points are there in bold. Right? So they are your keywords. How you explain is up to you. You can explain in your own words in a different way. That's not very important, but the main keyword has to be there. Just writing the bullet point, just writing the words in the bold, highlighted words as a bullet point is will not score you any marks. Don't do that mistake. You need to explain each points. Even you might think that because it's 5 marks, so just by giving 5 points, I will score 5 marks. No, you need to explain each 5 points, then only you will get those 5 marks. So a global multinational retailer has the advantage of a presence in different countries, which are not all experience the same economic conditions. So this is one first advantage is that they have a presence in many different countries, right? And each country, they are not in the same economic conditions. Some are facing bad economic conditions, some are better. So what happens is they are not going to be affected very badly, very negatively, right? For example, a mid price, now you see from here to here, see the shift. For example, this is how you have to link. They're linking this to the case study. First, they're told what is the advantage, that they have an advantage of presence in different countries. Now they are linking it to the Strom Zone company, right? Strom Zone company is a mid-price clothing retailer. That's why they said, for example, a mid-price clothing retailer may still have strong sales in a country which has not been as strongly affected by Soviet debt crisis as the Eurozone, right? From the case study you are picking and saying, this is not something you are saying from your knowledge. Because currently strong company is facing a crisis, right? Is having an issue because it is being in one country and it has been affected negatively. But if it's in many different countries, it will not be affected so badly. Second, managerial expertise may be fostered in the environment of the larger multinational enterprise and can be developed from previous knowledge of foreign markets. Third, economies of scale. Yes, multinational companies' economies of scale will be available. Can be gained in marketing, finance, R&D, transport, purchase by virtue of firms being large and having increased bargaining power. Larger the firm, better the bargaining power, right? Higher the bargaining power they will have, therefore economies of scale. Fourth, multinationals enjoy considerable cost advantage in relation to finance, right? We all know that multinational companies, they have access to wide range of finance compared to a smaller company or local companies, right? They have the advantage of access to a full range of financial instruments such as euro currency and euro bonds, which reduce their borrowing cost. Fifth, multinationals' financial strength is also achieved through the ability to reduce risk, right? By diversifying the operations and their sources of borrowing. So they're diversifying the operations by operating in different countries. Also, their sources of borrowing. They can have from different countries. Also, they can borrow, right? So that is their financial strength. So that's it for today. If you have liked this video, please put the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you are new watching my video for the first time, and do share this with your friends. Thank you.